This is a real-life scene from the streets of downtown Glasgow, captured on closed-circuit television cameras. Roving bands of young guys make their way through the street. They move in on another youth. They corner him against a car. One of the guys pulls a knife, a machete in fact. It's a relentless, vicious attack. The boy nearly died. The teen wielding the knife was caught and charged with attempted murder. A random attack? No.
That's what the kids do on a Friday night. They will be sober when they leave home. They will take a knife with them. It will be a locking knife. They'll hide it down the front of their shorts. They'll go a short distance and they'll meet some of their friends. They'll share a bottle of wine. They'll share some high-strength lager or beer. Then they'll meet another group, and the other group will be the opposition, who will have had the same preparation for the evening. And then they'll fight.
Can I ask you a question? What's that on your cheek? Is that what they call a chip in
That's a slash.
When did that happen?
Oh, when I was drunk, just got up fighting all that shit. So I was impulsive.
You're fleeing at my face.
Fucking mad.
And what happened? Why
I got slashed with
a knife?
happens more or less every day about here.
And they could fight 100 times, and the worst that will happen is somebody will get caught and be kicked several times, or someone will get punched. But now and again, two men will square up, or young men will square up, one with a knife and the other with a baseball bat. Who dies and whose family visits the grave and whose family visits them in prison is completely random.
Knife crime is pervasive in Glasgow.
Alive.
What?
You're lucky to be alive.
Every 6 hours, someone reports a serious slash to the face. The scars are worn proudly, a measure of their manhood. These boys are from Postle Park, an area rife with gang activity.
It's the way of life.
What do you mean? Just cause you're face somewhere, people try to fight with you in the town centre.
And it turns ugly?
Right, sometimes.
Recreational violence, territorialism.
What's recreational violence?
There's no profit. If you're a robber and you present a knife to somebody and say, give me your watch, there's a profit in that. You're getting a watch for your trouble. With territorialism, recreational violence is just, why are you fighting? Because you don't come from here. We come from here, you come from there, we fight.
What causes a fight between gangs?
Rivalry.
Rivalry over what?
Because people want to be the best.
The best at what?
Best at fighting and madness, no? This better not be in Glasgow, and I'll sue your asses to the ground.
Here's the territory they come from and fight over. They're known as the schemes, the poorest parts of the city. In North America, we would call them the housing projects. The violence may start here, but as we showed you, it often spills onto the streets of downtown. Here's another example. On this particular night, several groups of young men meet up downtown, and the result is a full-on brawl. Over 600,000 people live in Glasgow. Some 2,000 boys and young men take part in gang violence.
There's nothing to make them think twice.
Kathleen Mulhall has lived in the Postle Park neighborhood her whole life. She knows some of the gang members here only too well.
My brother was attacked by a gang, and the injuries that they gave him caused him to die.
How old is he?
37.
Kathleen's brother Stephen was walking across a local park one night when he was attacked by a group of boys.
There was bricks and bottles and stones used, and there was also a metal scooter that was used to strike Stephen in the head.
A scooter.
A scooter, like a manual scooter.
The kind a child would use.
Yeah. The impact that the scooter had in Stephen's head caused a fractured skull, which caused a blood clot, which over a period of time, because the blood clot was growing, caused Stephen to die.
After our interview, we were shooting scenes of graffiti on this wall near the park where Stephen was killed. Kathleen spots us and drives up.
Young Poso Fluto, YPF.
She explains the significance of the names on the wall.
Billy Joe, he was charged with murder. He was 14 at the time, so that's his name there.
This, as it turns out, is what she has to look at every day. The names of neighborhood boys who have been charged with murder.
Darren M, as you can see, that's Darren M, 02. He was charged with murder.
Including the name of the teenager who killed her brother.
You can make the assumption that what we've done up until now has not worked, and let's start again.
John Carnahan has been on the Strathclyde Police Force for over 30 years, investigating these crimes every day, chasing and arresting young men. In fact, Carnahan has a permanent reminder of what it's like on the street.
What happened?
It was, I was a young detective and relatively fit, and there was a fella breaking into a school, and we get the call, went to it, saw him, chased him for about a mile and a bit. He was getting away and I was just about to give up. He jumped over a fence, and as I jumped over the fence, I caught my finger on the top. That was it. And the annoying thing is, for years after, I tried to find out who it was, because I wanted to go back to him years later and say, "You cost me a finger."
The blade culture in Glasgow is nothing new.
Even a stabbing might not get more than a few lines down column in the Glasgow papers, because in this city of violence, ordinary stabbing is hardly news anymore.
For the last 30 years, the headlines have been practically the same as they are today. Today in Glasgow, gang violence takes as many lives as it did back in the 60s, about 70 people a year. Carnahan asked his chief intelligence officer to look into the situation, to give him a better idea of why this was happening.
I didn't just look at Glasgow in the last 2 or 3 years, I looked at it over 30 years. And what we found was that despite all the effort and money and time that we'd spent, we had made no appreciable impact into violence in Strathclyde.
Nothing.
Nothing.
McCluskey didn't only look at the crime statistics, she looked at every statistic coming out of the schemes. And suddenly, they had the big picture. This was not only the knife capital of Europe, these neighborhoods were a death trap for men in general. For example, the average life expectancy for a man in the United Kingdom is 76. The average life expectancy for a man in Iraq after the war is 67. Here, in the poorest parts of Glasgow, the average life expectancy for a man is 54. 54. Why? It's a perfect storm of factors. High unemployment. 1 in 6 households is fully unemployed, no one is working. High rates of alcoholism, depression, lung disease, low levels of education. Now, armed with this information, Superintendent John Carnahan came to a new conclusion. The policeman decided that scenes like this weren't just a crime. He decided scenes like this were a public health catastrophe.
If you've got a block of flats with 15 flats in it, and they're on a street, and the street's in an area of high deprivation, why is it the kids who are in those flats, the guy in the top flat becomes a teacher, the woman on the other side, she ends up a prostitute and a heroin addict, and the boy at the bottom becomes a murderer, and the guy on the other side becomes a victim? Why is that? Why? They live in the same street, they live in the same area. The difference is what's behind the front door. The difference is those early years. So I think the way to look at it is perhaps different from that criminal justice thing. And the way to look at it perhaps is to, or understand, is to think about it in terms of a public health issue. If we had applied, for instance, let's say that 40 years ago public health had a problem with measles and they decided that what they wanted to do was use the criminal justice model. Well, how would they have applied it to that? They would have built more hospitals. When you got spots, they would have put you into the hospitals and isolated you. They would have got more nurses to look after you. And once the spots got better, they'd let you out again. Now, it wouldn't have affected measles. We wouldn't have cured measles. But everyone would have felt a bit safer because the people who had them and were infected were locked away.
Now, the detective isn't saying violent offenders shouldn't be locked away. In fact, there's a whole new raft of legislation.
Just what?
Fight with other.
I would question whether or not police should be doing this.
Some people think this social approach is not the responsibility of the police. For one, Bill Aiken, a former judge and now a Conservative member of Scottish Parliament.
Where I would part company is the fact that I think that basically this is not a matter for police. This is a matter for social work services, for the welfare services, looking after the unmarried mother. Someone's got to be doing that, of course they have. But basically police officers should be out investigating and deterring crime.
You should be policing, not teaching moms.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to teach mums. That's nothing to do with me. But I want people who should be doing it.
But critics of the new approach believe one thing. Tougher sentences and more jail time will make kids think twice before they pull that knife.
That's the criticism now, that they aren't getting that message through lenient sentencing,
Yes.
mostly. People say that the sentences are too lenient for the kids to get any sort of message that the consequences are severe in this society.
Well, there's always the argument about, it's back to the, let's build more jails and lock more people up.
Right.
It's like the measles argument. It'll make us all feel
Right.
much better, but
Right.
it won't make one iota of difference to what's there.
Really?
They don't think about it. When they get into that fight, it's the heat of battle. It's that guy fighting you. You don't want him to get you, you want to get him. End of story. The last thing in anybody's mind is, I could end up in prison for this. Nobody thinks about that. Nobody.
Why do you guys keep fighting if it's so dangerous?
Pride. Pride.
Sorry, don't hang it up, pansy.
Carnahan and his team have only started their research into gang violence a year and a half ago. So it's early days. In contrast, young men have been fighting each other in Glasgow for generations. Everyone knows this problem won't be solved tomorrow, including Carnahan himself.
There isn't a single solution to this. I think it'll be 1,000 victories when
How long are we talking?
I think it'll take a couple of generations. But that shouldn't deter us, because we can start to make differences very quickly, I think. What we need to do is we need to be brave enough to commit to that long term. We need to say, yeah, enough is enough.
Do you think everybody's ready to do that? Say enough is enough?
I think there are more and more people coming around to it, but I don't think everyone is there yet. Because the most important people that need to say that are the people who live in these challenged communities, are the young men who are in gangs. We need to help them to walk away from them and say, I don't want to involve in this anymore.
As for Kathleen Mulhall, she won't stick around to find out how this story ends. She's had enough, all right. She's moved out of her apartment to another, safer part of town.
It's time to leave here. There's too many bad memories here. I don't feel that I want to be part of a community that they're all part of.
As for the boys of Postle Park, are they ready to say enough? To say no to gang violence? There's clearly a long way to go yet.
Fucking Polish,